Taking control of the car buying experience. Demand the most for your money. Here's the Car Buyer Advisor.
There are two guests on our show today. I'm representing Haus Motor Cars and Michelle Anderson with Nevada Mobil Automotive. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mitch.
Michelle, I want to start with just the reality here. This show has been committed to reform, and the type of reform is consumer reform. We looked at when we took this on and acquired this platform for our community, that there were several different ways to possibly reform an industry. Ambush journalism, while it's sensational, it really has been ineffective. You may take out one business, but then there is a plethora of them that you really are not focused on that are still getting away with it. More new businesses popping up. They change ownership names in the family. They move states. It's so out of control that you could dedicate 24 hours of television a day to it and never tackle the problem that way. And then the other type of reform that we've looked into is legislative reform, laws and regulations. But these industries are already regulated. The dealership segment, the service repair segment, they're already licensed and regulated industries. And yet both of us are here because our industry still runs amok.
That's correct. It does run amok. And, it's been said that a customer who has a good experience might tell one or two people, and a customer who has a bad experience might tell 10 or 12. And really, at this day and age, that's what needs to happen. That's what I rely on at this point for our industry, is for those people who do have the bad experience to tell others about it. Because without that, then the word is not getting spread. If a person has a bad experience, they cannot go back. They can take their dollars and go somewhere else. But if they're not telling other people about it as well, then the problem still exists.
Well, and here's even the problem with that. If you randomly, and this is really what this show stands for, if you just randomly, arbitrarily pick a shop and then you have a bad experience, here's the problem with that, Michelle. You've given them capital. Right. You've given them your money because you didn't do any homework, any research, and you've just given them the ability to keep their doors open. So the next person that comes in that falls victim to it, and the next person that falls victim to it, really what I want our community to get is they own it. It's their responsibility. And it's not just like, oh, well, that didn't work out so well. You just injured somebody behind you. I want our community to get the importance of their choices. It's more than just them. It's the betterment of the industry. It's the betterment of what's going to happen to their friends and neighbors in our community. And so I think that, telling people that's great. I have to share this because this is really fundamentally where the basis of this show came from. After over 3 decades in the retail side of the automotive dealership part of the industry, I just had the exposure to the fact of what was really happening around, running a store with integrity and hearing the horror stories from the consumers who would come in and say, why are all dealerships not running with the same level of integrity that you are? And I just finally had one day an epiphany that maybe I could open up a car buying school and help them understand the pitfalls in the industry and educate them in it. And then had the blessing of a platform like this to do it from, where we could actually get to have conversations with our community. But one of the examples, I think I want to start there, because if you go back to the inception of this show, I think one of the core reasons why we took this on as an enterprise, the Car Buyer Advisor, stems to an individual who is my son's mother's brother's girlfriend. And that's a long one, but anyone listening would know who I'm talking about if they're familiar with the family tree. But basically, it was her first car. Dad went out to shop with her, visited a pot lot, I'd call it, a lot on Kitski without any real reputation or standards. Mm-hmm. Just, they saw a car, it looked okay. They went out at night and they bought it without driving it. And let me just tell you that if you go back historically to the Car Buyer Advisor's inception of our Facebook, we did a commercial, a promo, trying to warn people about what could happen to them. And she just talked about she drove it off the lot, the brakes were grinding. The trunk didn't look like it fit on the car. It had duct tape inside, that it didn't even belong. The hood was peeling. that when she applied the brakes, it sounded like a freight train coming through the car. And she went on and on and on. I mean, there were like 10 different excerpts from what her experience was like on that car. And I want to go a little deeper into this. So she kept trying to get them to help her and trying to get them to help her. And she didn't, it was her first car and she was hoping that they would. And then finally she just had one problem after the other, still making her payments on time because she was doing the right thing. And finally went and somebody agreed to try to re-car her, to put her in another vehicle. Basically, they were going to trade it in and sell her another one. Mm-hmm. And in that by that time, we had met. And she was a very young, very attractive young lady. And I went out to see the car that they were going to try to put her in, Michelle, and it was graphically disturbing. But I just want to give our community an idea that this is the kind of walk around that they should do. And if they're not capable of it, or if they're not going to take the time to do this, to walk around and look at a car this closely, then they really should pay for an inspection. They should do that anyway if they find one they want. But we're going to get to that in this show because that's one of the points of this whole conversation. So I walk up to this car and I'm noticing that the driver's front fender is rubbed right where it meets the driver's door. There's paint missing on the inner seam of those two. Now, to me, that indicates they're rubbing, and that means that the fender was probably pushed into the door, and that's why they're connecting. So I immediately go up to the front of the car, pop the hood, and look inside to see what's going on. And first of all, the fender is bowed somewhat, so it's just a little higher than the hood, but not really visible to the naked eye, but you can feel it when you run your finger down the seam. And then I open up the hood and I look inside. And this is where the whole thing begins. The headlamp was loose. I could just wiggle it. On the driver's headlamp was loose. And there's a bracket that secures that to the car's front cross member. And it was a plastic bracket that was broken, and they tried to glue it back together, and the glue had failed. And you could see the glue line and where it failed. And basically the headlight, which is a safety feature on a vehicle,
right?
which, excuse me, as we said, DMV regulates this industry. That being a safety-related part of the vehicle was required by law to actually operate properly, and that would have been jumping around all over the place while it was driving, and it was an unsafe part of the vehicle right there. So I look a little further, and I'm trying to figure out, well, what happened? Was it just, look, sometimes, folks, you can have a shopping cart tap a fender and put paint on it. Doesn't make it a bad car. But when you notice that there's paint, you got to look and see what happened. So I crawl underneath the car, and the entire front splash guard underneath it is disintegrated, and there's pieces of it connected to screws, and yet the splash guard's gone, and I'm just starting to look a little further. I happen to invest in, as a dealer, a tool called a paint meter. And by the way, they're available on our website. They're $348.88. You can buy them at thecarbuyeradvisor.com. You walk up, you touch it against the metal, and basically it sends a signal to the metal. It bounces back, and it tells you how deep the paint is. Kind of like sonar in a boat would tell you how deep it is. And so the factories really traditionally paint very consistently. There'll be a small fluctuation from panel to panel because they're all computer robot painted. So I notice that there is a lot of thickness in the paint in that front fender. I go to the driver's door, factory original paint. So I go back to the driver's rear quarter panel near the trunk, and it's got Bondo all over it. It's just measuring very deep paint readings, and you can tell by sand marks underneath the paint there'd been Bondo in there. I do the same thing with the trunk. I do the same thing with the passenger's rear quarter, and they're all painted. And so I open up the trunk, and I do what a professional would do, is I peel back the carpeting that lines that trunk. And the car is a burgundy Mercury Marquis, and inside the back of the trunk, it's a yellow car. And I already now have the visual that this car was hit in the front, spun around, and the rear end collided with the medium on a freeway speed that would compress that back in so greatly that they would go to a junkyard, buy the back half of a vehicle, and weld it onto this one. Well, by that time, I then just was looking at the rest of the car and started it, and it's misfiring, it's running poorly. And I went to this guy, and I said to him, look, this is a 19-year-old, very attractive young lady, and you're trying to fix a problem with a bigger problem. would you consider treating her as if she was one of your own kids, and what it would look like? How would you feel if you sold her a car that left her stranded in a bad neighborhood and something happened to her? How would that make you feel? Do you have any moral turpitude or conscience or anything? And he said, oh, well, I didn't know that. Well, I ran the Carfax, 3 accidents and a salvage title. Of course he knew that. Mm-hmm. And the first car that he sold her also had a salvage title. Now, this is on a Kitsky potlot business. I won't mention the name, and I'll tell you why. It doesn't do any good. I won't give them the airtime of saying their name on this show. But you think that would be bad enough, right? He pulls her aside and says, look, honey, we're going to get you into another car, but next time you have to come alone. So, this is now a couple of years later that our show exists, Michelle. And just, about 2-3 days ago, mm-hmm. you called me up, mm-hmm. didn't even know about who did this to this young lady.
No.
Tell me what occurred in your office that prompted you to call the Car Buyer Advisor for some DMV regulation advice, basically some guidance.
Well, we had a customer that called us. He found us on Google. He had bought a car 4 days before he called us. He said that he needed some front end work done. At the time, he hadn't told us that he had just bought this car. He just said that he needed this work done, wanted to know how much it was going to be. And naturally, the first thing I do is ask questions. Well, why do you think this needs to be replaced? What's going on with the vehicle? That kind of stuff. And so he let us in a little bit, gave us some insight to it. And as the conversation went on, he told us that he had bought this vehicle on a lot on Kitsky, apparently the same lot as this young lady.
And it's not a surprise.
No. And he said that right after he drove the vehicle off the lot, the brakes were grinding and they were shaking really bad. So he told me that he took the vehicle back there and basically they threw some rotors at him and told him, you're a smart kid, put them on yourself. And
now I want to mind our listeners that when you talk about headlights, turn signals, tires and brakes on a vehicle, mm-hmm. these are DMV regulated items on a vehicle that have to meet minimum safety standards. And the fact that this is being thrown at this consumer when the vibrations and could cause a shift, a shimmy in the front end, a loss of control of a vehicle. These are safety-related items, folks. And if you think you have something that could make a vehicle unsafe to operate on a public highway, you need to contact the DMV, the Compliance Enforcement Division, and file a complaint. Look, that's what we want you to do. Is we want you to, if you are not going to do your due diligence up front, and you do run into something like this, well, first of all, shame on you for not going to the carbuyerinvestor.com and finding out who we do endorse and going to a reputable business that would have sold you a proper vehicle to begin with. But then at least take action. Don't just slough it off.
Right.
So
then this gentleman, he tells us that he's having a control issue with his car. He thinks it's a sway bar, wants us to check it out. We asked him when the car was bought. He told us it was 4 days before. And we told him at this point, you really, based upon what he was telling me, I said, we really should just do an inspection on the car. And it's my advice at this point not to drive it until we learn more.
And Michelle, I want to, right there say, do an inspection on the car. Now, he's already bought it. When's the right time to do that inspection?
Before you buy the car. It's always better to do the inspection before you buy the car. That way you know what you're getting into before you even buy it.
If he would have had you come out mm-hmm. or brought a car like that to the Sport House
right.
or had Nevada Mobil, which will go out to a site to inspect a vehicle.
We will go out to the lot if they will allow us on the lot. The other thing that happens is sometimes they'll allow you to test drive the car. You're welcome to get in that car, make an appointment with us, get in that car and drive it straight to our shop. We will stick it on a lift. We'll look at the car.
And if a shop, by the way, if they tell you no, you can't get an inspection, that's it. I'm done. Mm-hmm. There's no conversation any further, folks. It means they're trying to disguise something. Look, at the Sport House, we have a transparency policy. If there is a car, like I said, that may have had a scuff on a fender, an insurance company replaced the fender because it was, backing out of a garage and it was creased and there's no bondo, a new fender on a proper car, proper replacement doesn't make it a bad car, but it hits a Carfax and we happen to know that that's there. we make the customer sign the Carfax. Full transparency, nothing
Right.
hidden, on the table, and here's what it was. We'll show them the repair orders of what was done. We'll show them the work and whether it was done properly. And, that's just transparency. If you can't get a shop, and by the way, folks, if you want to buy a car from the Sport House and you want an independent inspection, please do.
And I can say that most of the reputable dealers in town allow us on their lot. The dealerships themselves allow us on their lot to do inspections on their vehicles before somebody buys a car.
When a guest comes to me and says, I'd like to get an independent inspection, first of all, I know the quality of our inventory. It's going to be a good inspection because our shop has already done it and brought it to a standard that we set, not the industry sets.
Right.
And then if they're that sincere about considering buying the vehicle and they want that inspection, I know I've got somebody that's really going to buy a car from me. As long as it passes and I know the quality of the inventory, it's a done deal for me because they're going to find out that we're selling them a quality car. And boy, that just made everything a lot easier.
So back to this young man. He scheduled an appointment for us to come out the next day and do an inspection on the vehicle just to see where it was at. About 30 minutes later, he calls us and said, I've had this vehicle for 4 days. I had to stop and fill it up on my way home. It got 3/4 of the way full, and now gas is spilling out onto the ground at the gas station. What do I do? Is this a safety-related item? I called the dealer.
Fire hazard, of course it is.
And he said, I called the dealer, and they've told me to take a hike. And I said, okay, hang on a second. Let me get some advice. And at that point was, of course, Mitch, when I called and I said, I know that there are safety-related regulations. What exactly is it? You advised me. And at that point, I got back on the phone with this young man and I said, park the car. It now has gas all over it. Do not drive the car.
Do not start the car.
Right.
Do not move the car.
Don't do anything. You need to park the car. And here's my advice to you. I said, this dealership has obviously sold you a vehicle that they know had issues. And if it were me, I would get an inspection before going back to them and say, I've now had a safety inspection because I've come to you 3 times. This is what I found wrong with the car. These items are safety-related issues, and you're going to fix them, or I'm going to call the Consumer Affairs Department of the Department of Motor Vehicles.
Well, and this was our recommendation. Look, folks, the very first guest ever on the Car Buyer Advisor was one of the compliance enforcement officers for the Department of Motor Vehicle. Go back, folks, and listen to our very first ever show. Our first ever guest was the Compliance Enforcement Division, and we talk about the consumers' rights. And we've had them on our show a handful of times over the last couple of years, welcoming them back because this is probably should have had them here for this show, but this just came up and we said, you know what, we've had it. We've got to do something about this. We've got to have this conversation with our community. And, the thing is you called me and I'm like, absolutely. The tires and the brakes and the headlight and the gas leak and the sway bars causing the car to be unsafe to operate on a public highway. These are all safety issues. I said, I didn't even say call the dealer. I said, just call the DMV.
Right. And he chose not to call the DMV. In the end, what he ended up doing was he called the dealership themselves. So he didn't have us do the inspection. He did call the dealership back and say, these are the issues. I've spoken with another shop. This is what they've advised me of. And either you're going to fix this stuff or I'm going to call and file a complaint. And so they immediately took the car back to the lot. And I don't know what's happened with that young man since, but I know that the car was taken back and hopefully it's being fixed.
Well, we're going to follow up on it and make sure that they did the right thing. This business has had multiple problems. The DMV knows who they are. And, folks, look. Here's the bottom line, Michelle. This is what crawls under my skin, is that, people go out and they use the internet and they look and they go by maybe a visual appearance. And I can tell you that at the auctions, when we're buying vehicles from any of the local or national auctions, that these cars are rated on a 50-point rating scale. And the beginning number is 0.0, and the highest quality cars are a 5.0, so it's a 50-point scale. And an average car is a 3.0. A below average car, a 1.0, and an above average excellent car, which I'm talking Pebble Beach quality, is a 5.0. And they really start with 50 points on these cars, and they deduct 1/10 of a point for door dings, 1/10 of a point for tires that aren't, for per tire, usually for tires that are not measurable enough. They then go into mechanical. Some major mechanicals will be a full 10-point deduction, and they give you a valuation. Now, here is the dilemma. This is one of the core fundamental problems with the industry and the consumer that they don't get about the quality commitment of a quality business. So you take a $30,000 car that if you looked at the same year, the same model, and it had a average value of $30,000. An above average car would be $34,000 or $35,000. That would be a 50-point car. And it's going through auction. These are dealer costs, not retail. This is like if I had a $30,000 average wholesale cost, $34,000, $35,000 for the perfect car, and $25,000, $26,000 for the below average car, the 1.0. And that means there's $8,000 to $10,000 swing for the same year and model vehicle. Now, what that really entices a lot of these greed-motivated businesses to do is to buy the lower grade cars. And quite frankly, when I go down to Southern California to buy cars, we see every couple of weeks between 1,500 and 2,000 cars. And in there's a mix of every different quality of car. And guess what? At the end of the day, they all sell. Somebody buys them. Somebody buys the zeros. And basically what they're doing is like this little potlot does, is they're buying the cheapest car they can.
And selling it for top dollar.
Selling it for top dollar, but making it cosmetically appear like it looks great. And here's the problem. It's really easy to hide some of this stuff with, some paint and metal and some mechanical Band-Aid reparations. You get in the car, you don't know it. And then when you do have a real inspection by somebody who does know, it's already a little bit too late. And so what happens is they can turn around and buy a car $10,000 less, spend $2,000 or $3,000 in their own shop supporting their own technicians, and be the lowest price, because internet is a price-based animal on its own. It's not a quality-based animal generally. And then they wonder, what happened? How did this happen to me? One of the things I think this is really interesting, we offer on the CarBuyerAdvisor.com some educational videos, how to perform preliminary cosmetic and mechanical inspections, getting the tools the pros use to inspect cars. I mean, this was the foundation. The first thing we did was to give the consumer the tools. And, it just baffles me how few of our community really, while they're on our website looking at our preferred business page, actually download those. You can download them right then and watch them before you go out and buy a car. And basically what I do is I walk people through what I would look at if I was taking a car on trade or going to an auction and buying it. Right. I give them the same walk around and the same knowledge that I've been using in the industry for 30 years. Now, the bottom line is even if you use these types of tools, if you're not a mechanic or an expert in this industry, it's still an absolute need for you to rule out the cars you don't want. And when you think you found the one you do, to get that inspection. And before we go to break, Michelle, I want to talk about how, in our shop, we charge an hour labor for a basic inspection. They can go up at Sport House and do compression tests and other things depending on the type of car that they want. But a basic inspection's an hour labor, and you will go mobily and do these. So, I mean, I just
for an
can't
hour
imagine.
labor as well. For an hour labor, yeah.
And I mean, our hour labor, depending on the kind of car it is between $90 and $110 an hour. And your labor rate is even less than that.
It's $89.
And you'll go to them at that rate.
To them or to the dealership or wherever they want. And all they have to do is set an appointment. We'll come out to them. Whether you're buying a car from the dealership or you're buying a car from a private sell, we will go out to you. And one of the major things that we check for, again, especially with a private seller, is are the lights set? Is everything set in the vehicle? Because a lot of times what'll happen is that check engine light will come on, and people know a way to bypass that light by simply disconnecting the power. And so that's what'll happen. And in the end, the monitors that test for that light to come on or that test for smog readiness are not ready. And we've gone out and we've caught a lot of those. We've saved a lot of customers a lot of money.
Well, and I want to take a second again before we go to break and really explain what you just said, because I don't want people to breeze over that and not get it. So if you have a car in the used car market, and there are some savvy people that will go out and buy a car, got a check engine light on, and they'll go out to flip it to make some profit. And what they'll do is it's got a check engine light on, or it's their own car, and they go to the shop and they get this huge estimate for what it's going to cost to repair it. And then they find out that all they have to do is to shut that light off is disconnect the battery.
Right.
Now, that light's going to remain off until these computers go through a series of batteries of tests, which are called monitors on the car.
Right.
And these are set by the emission standards, federal emissions requirements, and they're included in all of the modern vehicles today, back a decade at least.
And it goes through a test by a series of driving conditions, stopping and going, and how long you're driving and at what speeds. And so really the average consumer will drive somewhere between 50 to 150 miles before those monitors will actually set. And so what happens is now you've bought this car that has a check engine light on, but now it's out, and you don't know that there's a problem with the vehicle.
And between 50 and 150, 200 miles later, the light's back on.
That light comes back on.
Right. And now, here's why that inspection is so important is you will plug into it, and then you can tell if that computer has been reset, if it's still in the monitor inspection mode.
Right.
And if it is, it'll also tell you the fault codes that existed that it's searching for.
That's correct. And it'll keep, they can unhook that battery so the light goes off, but in the end, the computer has an alive memory. It's called keep alive memory. So even though that light is off, we are still able to pull those history codes and see what was going on with that car before that battery was disconnected.
Yeah, so I mean, this is, we're going to continue this conversation here, and we're also going to give you an opportunity if you've had, one of these types of things happen to you to call in and talk to us today, or if you want some advice on, shopping for a car or servicing a car, you feel free to give us a call. The phone number is 775-823-1920. If you're going to share a story about a business that has failed you or somebody you know, we're going to ask you to refrain from stating the business's name, and I'll share with you why. It's always been our policy since our inception. We're not here to slander anybody. What we're here to do is to promote the quality that does exist in our community. We treat the others as if they do not exist. We won't even give them the airtime on this show. We won't let their names be said on this show, because a week from now, we don't want one of our listeners to get confused which was the good one, which was the bad one. If you heard the name on this show, it's a business worthy of your support that we endorse. And we ask you, if you do call in and talk to us, to refrain from stating the business's name, but you can certainly talk about what's happened, get some advice, get some information, share it with our community. Again, that number when we come back from break is 775-823-1920. Again, mechanical questions as well, something happening with your car you want some help on, give us a call. We'll be right back after this brief break. Stay with us. Before the break, we were talking about, the inspection process before you buy a car, not, how horrible it is to get one after you buy a car when you start to have problems, and then you find out when you could have done that up front. And Michelle, we were talking about this inspection process. Sometimes an inspection process will find something minor, and that's okay. Look, if you find something that needs to be addressed, doesn't make it a bad car. Sometimes it's just simply okay. It does adjust for its value, though.
Look, the way that I see it is, you can have minor repairs with a car. What it comes down to is making the car buying experience a fair playing field. And that is our goal with the new car buying inspection, is to go out there and say, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, we've done our inspection. This is what we found. The car is in good shape minus these minor things that need to be repaired. It might cost you a couple $100, but that's really not any reason to turn away from the purchase of this vehicle. What we're really trying to prevent is those major catastrophes that'll happen, or these dealerships that are selling these cars that they know are not good from the get-go, and people are buying them because they're not getting these inspections.
I just really, I want to call our community accountable for this. And this is really why, we didn't just sit on the bleachers any longer and become resigned to the fact that this is just the way the industry is. I have committed my life to this work, to this community, and to a nation, because we're going to take this into every city in the nation We're currently in the process of trying to expand this into the Sacramento market. We're going to go to every major city in this country because every city's got the same problems, and get through the riffraff and get a community to start making a difference. I think it's why I love this quote that was said very early on our shows, that this was the most brilliant, not a shot fired revolution in the history of capitalism. And not a shot fired because we just said before the break, we won't slander anybody. It's not a professional business model, but that there's no shots fired because of that. But we're going to revolutionize an industry, because what's going to happen, folks, is once you realize in an industry that you have nothing but, most of you have at least stories or disdain for the industry as a whole, have heard problems, had problems yourself, never felt like you were getting your money's worth. Well, here's the reality. Once you experience the quality of the businesses that we endorse, you really can no longer go backwards. And I want to share that with you, because those people in our community, and bravo to you, I really applaud you, that have taken this on. Michelle, this is now over 25 months that we've been on the air.
And I think we've been with you since the inception.
You have. You were one of the first businesses we said, this is a standard of the industry we want our community to rally behind. And your business has been growing exponentially by the people that have been supporting it through this show and our efforts. And I'll tell you, to me, the greatest gift of all is that those people I know have gotten the proper value for their money. They've been treated well. If something went wrong, they've been taken care of. And that was what's going to lead me to the next thing. Those people that have actually listened to us, do you realize in 25 months on the radio, not one has had to file a complaint with us on any of the businesses we've endorsed? It just absolutely shocks me to say that. Every time I say that, I can imagine people listening going, oh, well, he's just saying that. It's a fact. Yeah. We give our community on our website an opportunity to report businesses that fail them. And we announce it on the show regularly, report at thecarbuyeradvisor.com. And the reason why is in order to maintain the integrity of the businesses we endorse, we'd have to have that information. And I not do want to, one, Michelle, not one. I guarantee you that somebody's had a problem, but it's never had to escalate to us.
And I do want to say, we personally have been in business for 5 years. And in 5 years, I am not saying that we are a perfect business. Sometimes we do fall down. Sometimes a
part fails. It's not even your fault.
Exactly. A part fails, or there is a complaint or something like that. I truly believe that what means something to the community is the way that a business handles that when the complaint is filed. And we choose to handle it with the utmost of integrity.
Well, now I've said on this show that when you, as a consumer, and this is what we've gone out and done the homework for you. I've got over 3 decades in the industry since 1992, so 22 of them here in Northern Nevada, and a deep, deep automotive knowledge and background. And I've gotten to know this community, the businesses that are worthy in this community, and I've assembled them into a group so that you don't have to go out there by trial and error. It's a 22 years in this community's worth of knowledge that gives me the authority to endorse specific businesses. But I've said on this show from its inception, every business will have a failure. It is in the light of that failure, how that business acts, that defines them as a business. Do they act with velocity? Do they act with intention to do the right thing? Do they handle it with velocity? In other words, they don't put you at the back of the line. It is you've already been in. You go to the front of the line because we're committed to making you happy. And even at personal loss on that transaction, you still do the right thing because it's your reputation and you care about that. And this is a business that then has core values of integrity, transparency. And I got to tell you, folks, I, as an individual that has run, managed, general managed, multi-million-dollar franchise dealerships and Highline exotic independent stores, which I do now, that it is the best customer I could ever have comes out of the one that something went wrong.
Right.
And you just, I'll tell you, I'll give you an example. I had a customer once that came in and bought a car. And the next day they found that in the side wall, right out at the edge of the tread, hidden in there was a plug in the tire. We missed it. I mean, it's a human oversight.
Right.
They came in the next morning. Now, this car had about 830 seconds worth of tread. On brand new tires would have been 1230 seconds of tread. It's an all-wheel drive vehicle. you can't replace that one tire. And it was in an unsafe position on that tire. And immediately we had no choice but to replace all 4. I went right to the customer and said, you're going to get 4 new tires. And he almost wept. He actually told me he was up all night. He was worried. He was ready to go to battle. He never believed that. He thought we'd say, well, we'll pay for 1, you pay for 3, we'll just put 2 on. He had all prepared for all the different scenarios. And when I said to him, we're just going to put 4 new tires on this Range Rover, a couple $1,000s worth of rubber, he looked at me, he goes, I have a headache. I was so prepared to go to battle. And I feel kind of embarrassed because I came here because of recommendations about your business. And I just couldn't imagine you doing this. And I'll never buy a car anywhere else as long as I live. And that's what that customer's worth.
Right.
Their referral, that word of mouth, golden.
And we've had that same experience with customers where they've come in, like you said, parts fail. Even brand new parts fail. And we know it. So when we do a repair, occasionally that part will fail. And the customer will call us, 2 days later. And they've had such bad experiences with other automotive repair shops in our community that they are just immediately up in arms. They're ready to fight for that cause. And when they call us, we say, okay, we understand there's a problem. We were just out there. We fixed it. It seems like it might be the same thing. And usually we try to get out there same day if we can. But if we're booked, we just tell them, I have an appointment first thing tomorrow morning. Is that going to work for you? Or do you need somebody sooner? And they're just like, they don't know what to say. Yeah.
They're not expecting that. And it's so that then they just get that they don't ever want to do business anywhere else. Mm-hmm. And look, folks, this is what this is all about. It's your responsibility to find these businesses. And if you just, do a game of Russian roulette, sooner or later that bullet's going to go off. And it's not going to be a pretty sight when it does. And it depends on where it's pointed, whether it's pointed at your wallet or, at your whether or not you can get transportation to go to work.
Right.
It's just not a pretty sight when that chamber goes off and you've picked the wrong one and it happens. Now, here's again, I want to stress the responsible party for this is the consumer. Again, ambush journalism is ineffective. Legislation already exists. More legislation is really almost hopeless. But really, if you think about it, taking the operating capital, shifting it to quality businesses, taking it away from the others, and we have the power back as a community. And that's what we're calling on you to do. And it was just that this one individual had, from the same company, again and again and again, we hear these stories. We had to talk to you about the fact that this happens, and the fault, we blame you. Because if that person's friend that knew about the Car Buyer Advisor had said, hey, we listened to this show, you should get an inspection before you buy it, or maybe that's not one of the endorsed businesses, try one of these, that person could have been spared it. Mm-hmm. And it just sickens me that still continues to happen when there's now a resource for it. I don't get it. I don't understand it. It's like God sending you a rowboat because your house is about to flood and saying, I'm not going to get in it. I'm not going to get in it. Like you had an opportunity to save your life and you refused. I mean, that's
right.
What we're here doing. Michelle, I really have to make sure our community gets this because the respect that I have for your organization is as great as it can get in our industry. It is that you have taken on, being here, not just for personal gain, but because you just had it one day that somebody needed to do something about it. And when we talked to you about being a part of this, you said, you know what? We're in all the way. Somebody's got to take a stand for the community, and we're the business that's willing to do it. We're willing to go full out, spend our personal time off, taking a stand for our community. This industry that really, in Northern Nevada, we have some great automotive businesses, some of the best in the country.
We do.
And it's not that the industry as a whole is problematic. What we're looking at is that there's, in every one of these categories, a handful of them that rise to the top that don't care how everybody else operates. And it just amazes me again that there's a rowboat and people aren't getting in. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Nevada Mobile Automotive Service. You're taking the industry and taking it to another level. And I want to talk about this because this is when a business sits down and looks at what can we do to help people prepare for their services. And I think when you look, and this is really a remarkable concept that you've branded, and come up with. When you look at the problems that people have with their vehicles, 80% of the time at least, the problems are a result of a lack of scheduled maintenance.
A lack of scheduled maintenance.
And then the problem is the reason that the scheduled maintenance is lacking is when it's time to do it and the money's not available, it hasn't been budgeted for, and something else, and then a repair comes up, and then it's like chasing the repairs instead of staying with the scheduled, which could have avoided a lot of other problems. You've come up with a solution, and I love it. I love it, and it's called the Love and Care. So I'll let you share.
Love and Care car package, yes. Well, I truly believe that, there are just a few reasons out there why your vehicle is not getting the proper maintenance that it needs. The first one is consumers just don't know. And you don't know what you just don't know. And that's okay. 2 is maybe you know about it. You know it's there. Most people do those religious oil changes, but the other maintenance, they don't know the schedules on that. So they just don't do it. And as a result, there's a failure there. Or maybe they do know about it and they just don't have the time. They don't want to take the time off work. Time is money. Time is money. And every minute that you have to spend in the mechanic shop takes away from the money that you're able to make for your family. And 3, it's not something, car repairs are not something that are budgeted for. And so when that major repair comes up because of that lack of maintenance, then what's happening is it's a huge hit on the wallet and it takes away from something else that's needed for the family. So what we've done...
There's never a good time for it.
There's never a good time for car repair.
It's always, this is a horrible time for it.
And to tell you the truth, I am a business owner. I do the religious oil changes on my vehicle, but really the other repairs, unless they're in my face or I know about it or it's something that I am personally scheduling ahead of time, it doesn't get done. I'm busy. I don't do it. I am guilty of those exact things.
What I love is that you make it convenient because you're mobile. There's no more excuses, Michelle. Once they know you exist, they can have you come to their home. They can have you come to their office, and you're not just a pickup truck with the toolbox handyman style. These are full shops on wheels, a handful of them, fully equipped, machinery inside, ASE certified techs, ready to actually repair as if it was in your shop.
Right. And so anyways, what we did was we looked at what the main intervals are, what the major services that are needed for a vehicle to keep it running at its optimal running capacity. We call it its optimal health. And we've taken those services, put them into a series of different packages and amortize the cost of those packages over a 12-month period to make it available and affordable
and planned for.
That's right, and planned for the consumer. And so we call it our Love and Care car packages. It starts with a base package of 4 oil changes a year, a free set of wiper blades, and 2 diagnostics for anything that may occur.
And the diagnostics, we're not just talking about like what you'd go to an auto parts store and get this quick code reading. These are manufacturer style, deep computer reading that goes down into the brain and determines the actual cause of the failure.
Right. And we're not just talking about, when I say diagnostic, I'm not just meaning we're going to come out and do the check engine light. When I say diagnostic, we have planned in these packages for if you're driving down the road and all of a sudden your car cuts out and you're not sure what it is and now you need to call somebody, you can call us. That's part of the package. And we will come out and diagnose it free of charge for you because that's something that's in the package. We have included that with the package. So that base package starts at $15 per month.
I hate to say it, but there's, the same letter of the alphabet repeated 3 times. I don't know that it's much less expensive, and it doesn't have them come out and diagnose to fix your car. It doesn't include oil changes, just it'll tow you somewhere.
Right. They will tow you somewhere. We will actually come out
far, far away. Sometimes.
And those diagnostics that are in the packages, those are free of charge to you. We are including those in the package because we know that even though you do have that regular maintenance, sometimes failures happen and it needs to be covered.
And we don't know if it's going to happen at 77,311 miles and 2/10.
Right.
You want to be prepared for it. I mean, I really like this. It's like affordable. Mm-hmm. There's no more excuses for, I don't have the money for it, the time for it, because it's convenient.
And those oil changes are conventional oil changes. Again, that's $15 a month. We have our salesmen have the agreements that'll come out, and they'll take care of that for you. It's just a recurring charge that's done. And our most expensive package that we have, the highest level package that we offer, is pretty much 4 oil changes, your package or your choice of package oil. So you can get conventional high mileage or fully synthetic. It comes with all of the fluid changes that you would have in your car on a yearly basis, your brake fluid flush, coolant flush, transmission service, rear differential, transfer case, plus $500 towards a $500 value towards any necessary repairs that would be needed for the vehicle, like maybe brakes or something that would be needed. That amount would be allotted into that higher level package, and that starts at $140 a month.
Yeah, and so basically you can prepare for it, budget for it, have a steady amount come out monthly, and now you can have it when you need it, when something goes wrong, and be prepared for it. Real quick, you're also offering a special I want our community to know about. It's a winter preparation package. We have about 1 minute left. Let's give it to them so that they know where to go for that.
Sure. Our vehicle winterization special is $84.95. It runs this month. That's
about $150 to $170 value.
Right. So you're getting it for half cost. We can actually come to you for that, or you can come to us. Our address is 2540 Sutro Street, suite number 12. You can reach us at 775-200-4669 or visit us on the web at www.nvmobileautoservice.com.
And folks, if you want to visit the Sport House, also legendary, respected, and exclusive service, sales, consignments, Highlines, exotics, and affordable everyday transportation. A lot of people don't know that. You can find the Sport House at 9732 South Virginia Street. That's right next to the Winco at South Virginia and South Meadows, right up against the freeway, almost like it's just to the left of the Winco, up against the freeway there. If you have problems finding it, just give us a call at 775-329-1447. We thank you for tuning in today, and we call on you to take this show and share it with your friends. Tell them that they are now responsible. Tag You're It. You're responsible now for this industry, for the reform. Don't forget to tune in every Saturday at 10 a.m. on 96.1 FM, 1270 AM, CBS Sports Radio. And folks, tonight at 7:30 on Channel 2 on CBS, the Car Buyer Advisor Television, another group of our businesses that we endorse on television. That's tonight at 7:30 on Channel 2 CBS TV. Thanks for tuning in. Take this on and share it with your friends. Have a great, safe weekend. We'll talk to you next week.